Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Quianna's show. Before we get into today's topic, remember, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. We are continuing our discussion on an asylum group in the Republic of Ireland named Abolish Direct Provision. They go by another name called Say No to Direct Provision. And over the past few days, approximately, I think it's been approximately 23 days, they've been protesting in front of various NGO offices, in front of governmental buildings, protesting deportations of asylum seekers. My understanding is that Abolish Direct Provision is comprised of present asylum seekers as well as previous asylum seekers. So it's unclear to me as to whether any Irish citizens are a part of this organization or whether any other persons that are living in the Republic of Ireland are part of this organization. But at any rate, it does appear to me that this organization is speaking on the life world of asylum seekers and attempting to reiterate a stamp for I think about 1,500 asylum seekers. And I have been following this protest since it started and following it very closely. Now, I have previously reached out to Abolish Direct Provision to engage in a critical conversation with their leader about the hunger strikes and about the protests that are happening. Now, I have my own personal views on hunger strikes. However, my view on hunger strike is not I don't think that it conflicts with the rights of asylum seekers. I am an asylum seeker myself, living in asylum accommodation. And so this discussion that I want to have about what the demands, the discussion that I'm seeking to have with Abolish Direct Provision about their demands is really related to putting to test those demands and to see if they are efficacious. Now, I'm not saying that I am sitting in judgment of their demands. I'm actually not. The purpose is to reiterate a critical discussion on these particular social movements that are erecting across the island, because it's good to have a discussion about them. I think that deeper discussion is important, and I am certain that Abolish Direct Provision is having these discussions with the government, or they're seeking to have these discussions with the government. They've actually already had focused interactions with NGOs. They've had focused interactions with several NGOs in the Republic of Ireland. I'm a bit confused as to one aspect of these discussions that they're having, and this is not a criticism by any means. It's just something that I'm wanting to know more about. It's a question that I'm asking. So essentially what I'm reading online is that Abolish Direct Provision will, I guess, in a sense, in their words, put an NGO on their list or on a hall of shame and criticize them for not advocating for asylum seekers. However, when to my understanding, when they engage in focused interactions with those NGOs, and there is a letter sent to the Minister of Justice, then those statements are retracted. So there's an allegation made against the NGOs in the Republic of Ireland that they have not been protecting the rights of asylum seekers. But when the NGOs agree to issue a letter to the government, then those statements are retracted. Now, I might talk about that in another video, but right now I'm really waiting on Abolish Direct Provision to reach out to me so that I can have this discussion with them about it. I personally don't want to assume anything about their intent or put forward a position, however attractive to the public, in support to undergird their activism, if I don't have like any information to really back that up. And so I also seen, well, I'll backtrack. So there's been, from Abolish Direct Provision as well, aka Say No to Direct Provision, there has been criticism. I'm sorry, it's confusing to me because in some of the posts it appears as if they are criticizing Minister of Justice, who is Jim O'Callaghan, but then in other posts it appears as if they're criticizing these NGOs for accepting the grants and funding coming from the Justice Department and not advocating for asylum seekers. So Jim O'Callaghan is the Minister for Justice, Home Affairs and Migration in the Republic of Ireland. And he is part of the Fianna Fáil, hopefully I'm not butchering that name, the Fianna Fáil party. And there is a list of focused areas on his website. So the first focus that they have on, or that Minister O'Callaghan has on his website, is to reunify Ireland, to rebuild public housing, reward hard work and promote businesses, protect the vulnerable, save the environment, protect Irish culture and language. I looked through a lot of the policy areas of Minister O'Callaghan, and I see that I think he's really passionate, it appears, about domestic violence and domestic issues, really passionate about what appears to be victims and victimology. So it's interesting to possibly have a discussion with him about his views on that as well, on why he is so connected to issues of domestic violence, and what brings him closer to victims, like why is this a soft spot for him. It'd be interesting if there were a conversation around that. That does not mean that Abolish Direct Provision needs to have a conversation with Minister O'Callaghan about that. That is just my looking at the policy areas on his website and noticing that that appears to be something that he's very passionate about. Now, recently, Abolish Direct Provision changed spokepersons. The organization was led by a person named Angie Russell, but they posted that she resigned for personal reasons. I'm not really sure what those reasons were for. They did not list that in detail. And I think coming up to date, there were approximately 5 men or 5 people that were in that have gone on a hunger strike, and then 3 of those people broke their resistance, leaving 2 remaining. It's unclear to me as to whether or not there are more people, more asylum seekers on hunger strike, whether more asylum seekers include the asylum seekers that have broke their resistance, or whether those that have broke their resistance are no longer on hunger strike. They've posted multiple images on their website with asylum seekers and ambulances, so it'd be interesting to learn more about that. Now, I really want to give a thick description of these protests that are happening within the Republic of Ireland. So to reiterate, they have protested at the offices of several NGOs. And basically, I think the argument here is that there is an NGO society within the Republic of Ireland, essentially, that these NGOs are collecting funds from possibly donors or governmental departments, such as the Minister of Justice, and not properly allocating those funds to asylum, or allocating those funds to advocate for asylum seekers. Now, that is not an argument that I am personally making. This is an argument that is coming from the posts that are on the website of Abolish direct provision. And so, as you know, I was an asylum seeker in the Republic of Ireland. I had protested myself individually in front of a NGO there known as, God, I forget the name of that NGO, but I protested at an NGO there, which was in Cork, and it didn't go quite as how I think it's going now. When I protested, to reiterate, I was protesting by myself. I had my own personal issues, and then I had reached out to asylum seekers to advocate on my behalf. Somebody in a position of power convinced them not to go out and protest with me, so I ended up protesting on my asylum issues by myself. And in this particular situation, asylum seekers have come together to protest what appears to be disruption of their way of living, and then deportations. There was also a post that I noticed that Abolish direct provision posted on their Facebook account, which stated that the far right is silent. So I don't know if this means that there's not a counter movement coming out en masse and protesting against their movement, or if their movement is making headway, or if there is not a conservative right-wing movement in the Republic of Ireland to, I guess, compete with what they're doing. Now, I have looked at a number of comments under each of these posts, and there does appear to be many comments that, in my personal opinion, read right-wing based or anti-immigrant or anti-asylum. But again, these comments, you can't trust them, because this could be any person posting these comments under these posts, and it could be any person. It could be one person under 7-10 accounts posting negative comments. You really can't tell. So I guess their argument, to reiterate, is that it appears to me that there has not been a counter movement coming out to contest the grounds that Abolish direct provision is presenting to the Irish government. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that has not happened, that people have not come out in masse to counter these movements. Usually when asylum seekers protest their deportations, many people come out in support of the asylum seekers rather than the other way around. So to reiterate, I'm not surprised that not many people have come out as a counter movement to these protests. It's also interesting as to whether Abolish direct provision is seeking a response from those who find themselves on the far right, whether that is a response that they want. And if that is a response, it raises an important question as to what responses do they anticipate and how do they intend to respond to it, is the question to me. Let's see. Now, to reiterate, some of the protesters have been hospitalized in the Republic of Ireland, and there has been opinions about what that is online. So in the comment section, there's opinions about that, and I currently am holding my opinion on that because I really want to engage in a critical discussion with Abolish direct provision about hunger strikes, about protesting, and about deportations, about NGOs, etc. Again, Quianna's shelf is not intended to be a gotcha or it's a trap. That's not what Quianna's shelf is about. This is the modus operandi and fallback of intelligence agencies and information gathering agencies that are co-opting the Republic of Ireland and Belfast. They're in this mode of, I gotcha, and I'm trying to discredit you and discredit your argument. That's them. And I believe, unfortunately, that there is people in positions of power in both of these nations that are stirring up controversy and preventing groups from being able to meet and have these very necessary discussions about asylum. We know that the right to asylum is axiomatic. We don't need to argue that point. But what I think is happening, of course, in both nations is that you have somebody in a position of power who is abusing their power. And what they're doing is they are going to different groups and sowing division. And it's something that has happened to me personally, where there is a person in power that is seeking to undermine my right to education, my right to protest, my right to engage in these critical discussions. Everything for this person in power appears to be strategic and calculated. And I think that that's quite unfortunate because they're wasting a lot of time trying to separate me from society when they could be focusing their time and attention to real issues that are plaguing Belfast and real issues that are plaguing the Republic of Ireland. And I challenge you to look at the Belfast Telegraph, to look at the Journal, to look at the Irish Times. I challenge you to look at these publications and to look at all of the crime that is happening within these two jurisdictions day after day after day after day, and to ask yourself, had the energy that they had used to focus on people like you and I, who are just doing journalism and who are just writing critically about state officials and politics and law, etc., had they allocated that time and those resources to other issues that we're seeing in the Irish Times, the Belfast Telegraph, and also within the Journal. And I would even argue in some of the US controlled publications in America, had they focused their attention on those particular issues, would we see a decrease in criminality? Because it reminds me, ladies and gentlemen, there was this, and I'm getting off topic because I've completed that discussion about abolish direct provision. But it reminds me of, I don't know if you have seen, there was this movie called Don't Be a Menace While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood, right? And it's a parody of Menace to Society and a lot of these black films that are in the United States. And so in this movie, there's a scene where two of the protagonists are walking into the store, and as soon as they walk into this convenience store, they are being followed and watched and accused of theft and not paying for items within the store. And then, interestingly, there is a Caucasian man that comes into a store with a duffel bag or just like a sackcloth and a weapon, and he's loading that bag up with all of it's like stealing all of the groceries in that store, like just taking a lot of stuff. And as soon as he leaves, like he drops, I think it was money that came out of the cash register or a product that came out of the bag, and the storekeeper picks it up and gives it to him, not realizing that person had robbed them blind because of this blind spot and confirmation bias about Black Americans rather than other groups. This is not to argue that white Americans are doing this in stores, that they're stealing or that they're engaged in. This is not a criminological argument. This argument essentially that what intelligence agencies are doing is that they're focusing on people that are not doing anything wrong, but just trying to make it through the day, and focusing on people that are stereotypically likely to come under the lens of law enforcement just by virtue of their race and their situation in society, rather than focusing on the big fish, right? Or the large fish that are committing crimes. I forget the saying, but there was a saying that says that, I don't know, it was like a net lets small, but like it captures small but doesn't capture the big. I forget what the saying is. I'll have to go back and look at it. But essentially that's what happens is that men in power often are not held accountable for their crimes. Power in general is often not held accountable for their crimes. This is a topic for a different day, but we'll talk about that during a different episode about power and state crimes. But I want to go ahead and end this video with that. I think that the conversations about NGO ethics and morals or NGO policy is a necessary discussion to have in both the Republic of Ireland as well as in Northern Ireland. These are necessary discussions to have. And I would like to have these discussions too. Now, I believe that these discussions will come sooner than later. Right now it is cold and rainy, so it's really difficult to have these discussions outdoors because people don't want to stand in the cold and don't want to stand in the rain. Me being one of those persons. Again, there was an opportunity for me to have a discussion this afternoon, but it was cold outside and I knew that rain was coming and I didn't want to miss my bus, so I didn't have like this critical discussion that I could have had. But hopefully I'll have some when the weather clears up. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to talk to you next time. Bye-bye.